Hi everyone, I'm Tracy. Thank you for tuning in today. So I have another Lahaina Fires update. I'm going to go into a press conference I saw, give you guys some feedback on what I think of that, and then towards the end do a little bit of a deep dive into John Pelletier, Maui's police chief, and I found some information that hasn't really been talked about in the media yet. So let me comment on the press conference that Mayor Bissen and General Kenneth Hara were at, and there were members of the media asking them to resign, which I don't think they're going to resign. They said they're not going to resign. They should probably be fired. It's not too hard to see that, at least in my opinion. They're responsible for a very large amount of deaths in an area that they were responsible for. So when Mayor Bissen was asked, who was in charge, where were you when this fire was going on? Because he claims he didn't know who was in charge, and he didn't realize that the fire was as bad as it was till the next day. Now, the fire that is responsible for the damage started around 9 a.m., 9:30 a.m. And during that day, it swept through Lahaina. At about 5:40, there were reports, calls in, that people were jumping in the water to escape the fire. So it wasn't like it happened in an instant. It happened throughout the course of a day, about 8 or so hours, 8-9 hours, give or take. So they had this time to respond, and they didn't. In fact, they claimed they didn't even know what was going on. Okay, so Bissen was also asked who was in charge during this time. He had the audacity to say, I didn't know. I didn't know until the next day. And so now the General Kenneth Hara came in front of the podium, and he could have called in the military to help during this fire, to rescue people. There were reports of people in the water from about 5:40 in the evening. He could have activated the Navy to help rescue these people. And again, he is not taking responsibility at all. I have a quote about when they asked him to resign. But again, his excuse was, I didn't know it was that bad. Okay, he didn't know till the next day. So he's saying no one called him during that whole time saying there's a city that's on fire and people are dying. It's very, very hard to believe that no one told him. And he even says that he doesn't feel sorry for what he did because the fire was simply too fast. Yes, it was a fast-moving fire, but they had the day to do something and they didn't. I don't think it's hard to understand that they completely failed in their responsibility to protect the citizens of Maui. Very, very easy to see. I'll give you a quote. I have no intention to resign unless directed to do so by Governor Green. And he just says, I acknowledge the frustrations of some people in Hawaii and elsewhere. There's a lot of anger and misinformation, disinformation, and malinformation. Now, malinformation doesn't mean the information is wrong. It means that there has been information coming out that doesn't fit their narrative. So, for example, the Great Sphinx in Egypt, they have found water damage along the sides of the Sphinx, indicating or basically proving the Sphinx is older than what originally thought. They were thinking like 5,000 years old, but because there's water damage, it has to be much, much older. But that water damage is considered malinformation or inconvenient information. He says it right here. General Hara says there is malinformation out there. So this information to him is inconvenient because it makes him look like he didn't do his job. He said it. I'll link that interview down below. It's a quote right here, and he admits that there is malinformation going around, and that's what the anger is about. Okay, he has no intention of resigning unless the governor asks him to, and the governor probably will not. Okay, so this is out in the open how incompetent they were at their job during a time when their citizens were being burned, were being killed by this fire. I just wanted to point that out because I don't know if that press conference was given quite enough attention, but I did really want to point that out. And the fact that they're still in their positions is, I guess, unbelievable, but believable. You know, I think you guys know what I'm saying. Okay, so now I'm going to talk a little bit about the chief of police. His name is John Pelletier, and he's fairly new to the Maui Police Department. He was sworn in 2021. I have the date here. 2021. So he's been in that position for me about a year, 2 years. So he came, and a lot of people have pointed this out, and this information's been fairly public. He came over from the Las Vegas Police Department. He was a captain there, and he was the incident commander covering the strip during the massacre outside of the Mandalay Bay that killed 58 people. So that is the biggest mass shooting with the most fatalities in the history of the United States. And now the Maui fires, or the Lahaina fires, I'm confident that this is the biggest fire with the most fatalities in modern American history. The numbers they're giving, I'm very confident, are not accurate because they keep changing, and the numbers are going down as far as the number of missing, which is very hard to believe that there are less missing now than they were when they originally announced the numbers. Anyhow, back to Pelletier. He was so in order to be the police chief, you need to be voted in not by the people but by the commission. So he was unanimously voted in and given this position. What they did is they waived a law that has been in place for many years, which is, in order to be the police chief, you need to live in Maui for at least a year. So let me explain a little bit about the culture in Hawaii. The culture of Hawaii is very unique. It's not like other places in the world. The type of diversity, the fact that Hawaii became a state very recently in 1959. So it is kind of difficult to understand what being a kama'aina is unless you've lived in Hawaii. And kama'aina is the term that is used to describe someone from Hawaii or a long-term resident. So if you just move there, at least in my understanding, you're not a kama'aina. If you've lived there for maybe 10, 15 years, you can consider yourself a kama'aina. Or if you were born and raised there and maybe lived somewhere else and came back, but you have to currently be living there in order to be considered a kama'aina. And this is a title that's very valued when you live in Hawaii. So he is definitely not a kama'aina, and he has this position, which is a big step up from his position before when he was a captain. So the police chief is the highest in command. He is in charge of all the police officers, detectives, captains, lieutenants, and everyone is below him, answers to him. Okay, he gets paid much more than the average police chief. So the median salary, I looked up the Los Angeles police chiefs because there's just more information there. The median salary for the Los Angeles police chief is $132,100. And Pelletier gets paid $205,000 a year. So much, much more. I think, what was that, 40% more than what most police chiefs make. And then there was another incident that hasn't been brought up, and I think it's important to mention. In, what's the date? February 24th, 2022, a little over a year ago, 4:40 a.m., his Pelletier's personal secretary, her name was Terry Jones, was died in a high-speed car chase. So a little background on her. She was 55 years old. She had been working for the Maui Police Department for 32 years. She was very well respected. She was very well known, being at the department for that long, and she supported her family. She had children and grandchildren. She was kind of like the center stone of her family. And the story, the article that I read is, and this is confirmed by a few other news sources, is that at 4:40 a.m. her car hit a tree and she died from her injuries and was pronounced dead on the scene. And the reason for her getting into this accident is because a thief stole her purse or her bag. And then she got into her car and chased after this thief, the supposed thief, and ran her car into a tree. And I believe this is what happened. I don't know if the backstory is true. It just doesn't sound right. I try to picture myself early in the morning if I'm walking to my car on the street and I have my purse and a car comes up, grabs it. I don't know if I would be confident enough that I am going to be able to get that purse away from that person who is probably driving very fast, because I would need to get into my car, start my car, find that person, hope maybe you might hurt someone, you might hurt yourself just to get your purse back. Unless there was maybe some sensitive information in there or something that she didn't want found, I don't see why you would chase someone for that car knowing that you're putting other people and yourself in danger. It doesn't make sense, but that is the story, and I thought I would bring that up. And it was Bennett DeBeer that brought that to my attention, and then I looked up some more details. So it is a fact that his personal secretary died in 2022 under, to me, that is suspicious circumstances. Okay, so now getting to what the connection is between Vegas and Maui. So we're not going to find the person who put Pelletier up for this position, but just my opinion on what might have led to that big promotion and his ability to go from Vegas, where he was serving on the police force for a long time, to Maui, becoming the chief without having to obey the rules that were in place and not being familiar with the police department that he was now in charge of. I think there was observations and things that were observed in him during his time in Vegas when that mass shooting happened and the time after. I think there was some information sent to people in high places that he would make a good police chief in Maui. And maybe those values, those actions that they saw in Vegas might benefit these people in Maui. So it was important to have him there in order for certain things to be carried out during the fires. Okay, so we know that his police officers barricaded people in the fire zone. They barricaded the north side and the south side of Front Street, which are two ways that people can get out of Lahaina. There's, I can put pictures, I put pictures up before, there's video, and there's many first-hand accounts of people saying that they were turned away from getting out. So they were actually told, go the other way, go back to the fire. Or if they're trying to get out, they were just barricaded from getting out. There were some people that disobeyed, and if they had like all-wheel drive, they went around the barricade and, you know, sped away, and they survived. But if you stayed in line trying to get out, there is a good chance that those people died. Some of them did run into the ocean and possibly survived there. But it's just, it's not hard to see that the police chief should be getting those questions about why his officers were holding in people in the fire area. And there are people that have asked, that were in this situation, they asked the police officers, you know, why are you doing this? And their answer was, we're just following orders. And that's generally how it comes out. Usually a deputy, you know, police officer is not able to make these big decisions on their own. They're usually taking orders from above. And there isn't anyone higher in the police department aside from John Pelletier. He has the final say. So I was talking about the officials in charge that could have helped during the fires, how they're not taking any responsibility, showing any sense of remorse, or even saying, I wish I had done more. I wish I did my job better. Instead, they're making excuses like, I didn't know how bad it was, or I didn't know who was in charge. That was what the mayor said. I don't know who was in charge. How can you not know who is in charge when you are the elected mayor of that island? I don't think he didn't know. I think he knows that he was in charge. And I think that's a very basic understanding when you take your oath to become a mayor of an area. And I think if you're watching this, you probably agree that the two officials that I talked about who are in charge still need to be held accountable. And there needs to be some very basic questions asked to them, and they're not being asked. And if they are being asked, it's behind closed doors, and we may never hear their answers. But just looking at the facts, I do want to point out also, Pelletier, when things first started coming out, he said, I wrote down a list of all the times he's lied. Okay. He says there were no barricades preventing cars from exiting. And then all this proof comes out, pictures of the blockade, you know, first-hand accounts from witnesses saying they were asked to turn around and go back to the fire. Then he says, oh, wait, we did have barricades, but that was to protect the cars from hitting down power lines. Maybe there were down power lines. That's still not an excuse for keeping people in an area where a fire was about to hit. There could have been a better way, and there was no attempt in any way to get those cars out some other way. They could have even said, you know what, we can't let you drive. Get out of your car and run to safety. They couldn't even say that. And they weren't given the orders to be able to say that. And I think that is the reason why a lot of people did die during this fire. And this is a point that I believe is the source of a lot of anger and a lot of frustration. And when these officials talk, they only make it worse. I don't ever think they have properly addressed their responsibility in this tragedy, and it's just very unfortunate. I also did see a quick interview about the AG's investigation into how the fire started. And so the Attorney General works for the governor. She was appointed by the governor, and so it's her job that she investigates how this fire started. So she appointed this guy to coordinate the investigation. I'll look for the interview. I'll link it below. It's really not that impressive, because when the question comes up of are there going to be criminal charges brought upon the people responsible, he basically says no. He says the point that the AG wants to make is gathering information so we could move forward. So that's, to me, that's saying we're going to get the information, but we're not going to prosecute. We're not going to hold anyone responsible because we just want to move forward. Okay? But if you tell that to people who lost family in the fires, people who lost everything in the fires, I would guess that they're not trying to move forward. They want to get justice now to what happened to them now. And it's like they're trying to cover it up in the worst possible way. And so this makes me very sad, because I'm starting to think that no one will be held accountable for all of these deaths. And like a lot of other tragedies, these people will continue in their positions. I don't know if this mayor will run for re-election. I doubt it, but he's probably going to keep his job until he no longer can. And I think the same will be said for the other people in charge. So it's not a positive message that I have today, but I think it's important that these facts are brought up, and everything that all the quotes and things that I talked about can be verified. You can watch them for yourself. You can watch these people say these words. It's not something that I'm, putting in. I'm not like putting words into their mouths. This is what they said, and this is how they're behaving. So with that, that's what I want to share. I have another video planned. I don't know if I can get that up soon, because some of these videos do take days to do research and everything. But I want to thank you guys so much for watching these. And please do whatever you can to not let this tragedy be forgotten. Mainstream media has already moved on to other stories, but I think it's important that we keep this alive as much as possible. Please share this with as many people as possible. YouTube has already kind of, told me they're not going to promote some of the videos I put out. So yeah, it's really up to you guys to spread the word and get more people involved and let more people know what's actually happening in Maui. So thank you guys for watching, and I will see you all soon. Bye.